Wow Embossing Powder Week on the Paper Crafters Library blog. Every day during the week of May 21st to the 25th, 2012, we'll be sharing different project ideas featuring Wow's amazing embossing powders and embossing glitters. At the end of the week, 2 lucky winners will receive an amazing Wow Embossing Powder prize pack, and we'll share more details at the end of this video. In today's video, we're going to show you how to create this happy anniversary card. I used Wow's Pearlescent White Pearl Regular Embossing Powder to create the focal point or the background designer paper for my card. While shopping around, I noticed that a lot of the wedding stationery stores feature the same similar type of cardstock, and I wanted to create my own technique on how to create the same look. So let's get started. To start, you're going to need a piece of white cardstock, and here I'm using the White Smooth from Basil, and this piece is a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch square piece of cardstock. You're also going to need a background stamp, and here I am using this beautiful background stamp from Hero Arts. You're then going to need your Wow embossing powder, and this, like I stated earlier, is the Pearlescent White Pearl, which is what I want to stamp my background in, creating that beautiful focal point or that pearlescent type of wedding stationery background. So I always like to keep a coffee filter on hand so that I have excess embossing powder. It goes in there and I won't have any wastage because it'll go back into my jar. You're going to ink up your background stamp with your Versamark ink pad. So I'm going to apply the ink directly to my stamp. And I chose this background stamp because I thought it still had that beautiful anniversary or wedding style theme. This beautiful flourish with the script running through it I thought was absolutely gorgeous and worked well for my achieved look. So just ink up your stamp, and then you're going to stamp it directly onto your cardstock. You can pull that off your stamp, and once you have that inked up, I am going to sprinkle on my embossing powder, and you want to make sure that you get this all over your Versamark, tapping off any of your excess embossing powder into your coffee filter again so that you don't have any wastage. You can then take and apply your embossing powder back into your container so that you can use this at another time. So you can set this aside for a moment, and now we're going to emboss this using our heat tool. So bring that back in and just set that embossing powder. You can actually watch it melt. You just want to keep your heat tool moving. You can heat this from above or below, however you wish. You just want to keep your heat tool moving so that you don't scorch or burn your paper. So just watch it melt, and it turns into this beautiful pearlized look on the cardstock. And again, like I stated in the very beginning, when I was looking at some of the stationery stores, I found that a lot of the wedding cards and anniversary cards had this beautiful background to their cardstock, and that's the look that I was trying to go for here, and found a very inexpensive way to do this, and their Wow's embossing powders just worked so beautifully with this, and was so easy to achieve the same look. So once you have heated your cardstock, you want to give that a moment to cool and set your embossing powder to your cardstock. You just don't want to touch it, because if you do while it's still warm, you could get some fingerprints in there or smudges. So once you have this done, you're going to need a piece of ribbon, and here I'm using some of May Art's lace and pearl style ribbon, and I want to lay this across my cardstock about 1.75 inches up from the bottom edge. So I'm just using my grid paper to measure 1.75 inches, and I'm going to lay that across the cardstock like so. And then I'm going to wrap the ends of this around to the back and stick those down with some double-sided adhesive. You could also use some Scotch tape to go over the ends, which I would highly suggest, seeing that this ribbon has the pearl center. You don't want it to come apart from your card. So I'm not sure if I stated earlier, this piece of ribbon is about a 5-inch piece of ribbon. So you're just laying it 1 3/4 inches up from the bottom edge, flipping that over. I'm going to apply some double-sided adhesive on the back just to stick that down to it. And then I'm going to go over the ends with a piece of Scotch tape. And this just helps secure those ends to my card so that they won't pull apart later. So when you flip that over, you see that this is a beautiful embellishment to your created background. You can set aside your tape, and you're now going to need a piece of ebony cardstock that measures 4 3/8 by 4 3/8. We're going to take and stick this to our ebony cardstock using some some Stampin' Dimensionals. And we want to be fairly generous with our Stampin' Dimensionals because the height on our pearls does not allow us to stick the cardstock directly to the ebony piece of cardstock. It'll buckle slightly, so you want to make sure that you have enough Stampin' Dimensionals on the back of your white embossed piece of cardstock in order for it to stand up properly from the ebony piece. So you're just going to peel off the backing, and you're going to center and stick your embossed white piece of cardstock to the ebony piece, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. Once you have this done, you're going to set this aside for a moment, and you're going to need a scrap piece of cardstock, and I'm using white cardstock, and I've gone ahead and I've already die cut it from my fillable frames die number 4 from Paper Tray, and this coordinates with my stamp. So I've got my stamped image here, and that is found in Paper Tray's fillable frames number 4 stamp set. I've also chosen my happy anniversary greeting from the same stamp set. So once you have gone ahead and die cut this using your Big Shot, you can take your image and you're going to ink up the image with your Versamark pad in the same manner you did your background. We're going to stamp this in the same pearlescent white pearl embossing powder that we did our background. So once you have that, you're going to center and stamp this onto your die cut image. And then you're going to sprinkle this with the same embossing powder. So I'm just going to lie that in my coffee filter and sprinkle that beautiful pearlescent embossing powder over that stamped image, tapping off all of the excess. And then I'm just going to heat that to set that onto this beautiful label. So now that you've heated the pearlescent embossing powder around the label, you're left with this gorgeous label, which you need to now add your greeting, which is the happy anniversary. So I'm going to emboss my greeting using the ebony regular, the primary ebony regular embossing powder. So you're just going to ink up your greeting with your Versamark ink, stamp that into the center of your label, and then sprinkle embossing powder over top of that. If you happen to get any excess embossing powder on any part of your image that you don't want your greeting to be, just wipe that off carefully, making sure not to smudge it, so you don't want to get any unsightly black lines on your label, but you can just wipe those off. So again, you're just going to heat that embossing powder with your heat tool in the same manner that you have all of your previous pearlescent embossing powder. So now that your label is embossed and your greeting is embossed, you're going to bring back in your created designer paper that's matted on your ebony cardstock, and you're going to stick your label directly over top of your ribbon that you've added to your matted designer paper here, or created designer paper. And I'm going to stick that down using some Stampin' Dimensionals. And I'm going to place some dimensionals on the back of my label here, along the top and bottom. I'm not placing it along the sides because I don't want it to stick to my ribbon. So you're going to peel off the backing from your dimensionals, and once you have that, you're going to actually layer a second layer of dimensionals onto the first layer. Because of the height of the pearls along the ribbon, you want to make sure that you have the same height so that your label does not buckle. So you're just going to layer a second layer of Stampin' Dimensionals on top of the first. Then you're going to peel off the backing, and you're going to stick this directly over top of the pearl lace ribbon. And I'm just centering that before I stick it down to make sure that I am even on the left and right sides, and then just push that into place. Now we're going to need a piece of pink pirouette cardstock from Stampin' Up, and this piece measures 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. I'm going to center and stick this piece to the pink pirouette using some double-sided adhesive. And when I do, I'm sticking it, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. So now we're going to need to create our card base, and I've used some white smooth cardstock from Basil, and I have the card base, which measures 5 1/4 by 10 1/2, and I've scored it already in the center at 5 1/4, and I'm going to fold along that score line and crease this with my bone folder, creating a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch square card. Once you have that folded in half, then we're going to stick our matted created designer paper to our card base using some Stampin' Dimensionals. And this is a very dimensional card, but I just felt that the softness and beauty of the card warranted the dimension. So you're going to stick one in each of the 4 corners, flip that over, and center and stick this to your card base, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. Once you have that done, we're ready to embellish it. And I'm going to embellish it just slightly because I wanted the focal point of my card to actually be my created background, or my designer paper that I made using the Wow embossing powder. So I have added some paper flowers, and these are Prima paper flowers, to my card, and I'm going to stick them down using some of my Helmar 450 quick dry adhesive. You could always use a hot glue gun for this if you wish. So I have this beautiful white paper flower, and then Prima also makes these soft pink paper flowers, and I'm just going to cut them off their wire and fold over the wire slightly so that I can still hold my flower together. And set aside the wire. And this is going to be the only other embellishment to my card, just because I felt that the background that I created spoke for itself. So you're just going to stick down your flowers, and I'm going to stick these in the top right hand corner of my greeting label. In a small cluster. And once you have all 3 flowers stuck down, you want to give it a minute to dry. It is a quick drying adhesive, but you just want to give it a minute just so that you don't bump it or have it slide across the card. That would ruin the card. So just stick those down in a small cluster And there you have your finished card. A beautiful yet easy way to make this gorgeous background, and WOW has made it so simple with their pearlescent embossing powders. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, at the end of the week, 2 lucky winners will receive an amazing WOW embossing powder prize pack. One winner will be chosen from all the comments left on the Paper Crafters Library blog throughout WOW Embossing Powder Week, and one winner will be chosen from all the comments left on the WOW Embossing Powder blog throughout the week. Winners will be announced on Friday, May 25th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To enter to win, visit the Paper Crafters Library blog and leave a comment in the post you see here. If you're watching this video from somewhere other than our blog, you'll find a direct link to this post in the video description section. While you're there, I invite you to check out the benefits of becoming a Paper Crafters Library member by clicking on the Benefits of Membership link at the top of our blog. The winner will be announced on Friday, May 25th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Be sure to visit our blog every day this week for more great projects using WOW embossing powders and for more opportunities to win, as each day you leave a comment counts as one entry. See you on the blog!